The rain outside was relentless, 1,000 heartbeats against the hospital window. Each drop sounded like time itself refusing to stop. James stood motionless by the glass, still wearing the same damp clothes from the day before. His hair was matted from the storm. His face, pale with exhaustion. None of this had been planned, not the sudden illness, not the panic, not the endless night that followed. Just hours earlier, their small house had been filled with laughter. Little NHI was at the table, her eyes sparkling as she learned new words under Diep's patient guidance. "What animal is this?" Diep asked, her voice soft, melodic. "A squirrel." NHI answered proudly, grinning from ear to ear. They both laughed, the kind of laughter that fills a room with light. Diep had always been gentle, fragile in body, but strong in spirit. Yet, as the sky began to darken, something in her seemed to fade. James would never forget that moment, the tremor in her hand as she turned a page in Nie's book, the sudden pallor that washed over her face. "Diep, are you okay?" he asked, fear creeping into his voice, but no answer came. Her body went limp, light as paper in his arms. The storm outside broke open. Rain pounded the roof, wind screamed through the valley. James carried her through it all, the downpour soaking through his clothes, his heart pounding louder than the thunder. The drive to the hospital was a blur, just the sound of wipers, sirens, and her shallow breathing. Now, hours later, he could still feel her weight against him, not heavy, but terrifyingly fragile. The sterile scent of disinfectant hung in the hospital air. Through the small glass panel, James watched the doctor bend over her, preparing another injection. Every time the needle pierced her skin, she winced, and tears slipped quietly down her cheeks. James felt them too, deep in his chest. He wanted to be strong. To smile. To promise her that everything would be fine. "You'll be home soon," he whispered to himself, as though his voice alone could make it true. When Diep finally opened her eyes, her voice was barely a whisper. "James. You're still here." He smiled faintly. "Of course. I promised to protect you, remember?" She tried to smile back, but her lips trembled. "It hurts, I know," he said gently, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Cry if you need to." "It'll help." Outside, the storm roared on. But inside, time moved to the rhythm of her breathing. He fed her spoonfuls of porridge, the only food the doctor allowed. Each motion was tender, deliberate, the way he cooled the spoon with his breath, the way his gaze never left her face. Far away, NHI was calling for her County Diep. Her small voice crackled through a video call James made earlier. When Yi's face appeared on the screen, Diep's tired eyes brightened for the first time that day. "I'll come home soon," she told the little girl, her voice breaking. "I'll come home to you." But James knew she wasn't ready. Her illness was strange, something rare, something that stole her strength each time the weather changed. The doctor warned it could take weeks. James didn't care how long. He would stay. He would wait. That night, he sat beside her bed. She slept quietly, her hand resting in his. Machines hummed like lullabies around them. James leaned back and whispered into the dark. "You're safe now, Diep. I'm here. I'll always be here." Outside, thunder rolled again, a cruel reminder that promises were easy to make and harder to keep. A fragile dawn. Morning arrived wrapped in soft gray mist. The world smelled of rain and wet earth. The storm had passed, but the quiet it left behind felt heavy. James hadn't slept, yet his eyes were calm, the calm of a man who had accepted that love sometimes meant waiting in silence. Diep was resting. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and a faint glow had returned to her cheeks. When the doctor entered, James rose at once. "How is she?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "She's improving," the doctor replied. "But she must avoid stress. Eat well, rest often." "Her condition is delicate. Watch her closely." "I will," James said. When Diep awoke, sunlight slipped through the curtains and brushed her face. "The storm's over," she murmured. "Yes," James said softly. "You're safe now." Her eyes drifted to the small bowl on the table. "You made that?" he smiled. "Same as yesterday. Plain rice porridge with roasted peanuts." "Doctor's orders." Diep laughed, a fragile sound that warmed the cold hospital air. "You really know how to spoil a girl." He leaned closer, teasing. "Spoiled? You call this spoiled food?" "Not the food," she said, eyes glistening. "The heart behind it." That afternoon, James's phone buzzed. A video call. Little Nye's round face filled the screen. "Company Diep," she shouted. "I miss you." Diep's voice trembled. "My sweet girl, are you being good for Grandma?" "Yes." "But when are you coming home?" James tilted the phone so Diep could see better. "Soon," he said gently. "She's getting better." "Really? You're not sick anymore, County Diep?" "Almost," Diep smiled. "When I'm all better, I'll come back and read you stories again." "Promise, promise?" When the call ended, Diep wiped her eyes. "She's growing so fast," she whispered. "She's strong," James replied softly. "Just like you." The long way home. Days passed. Diep began walking again, slowly, carefully. She laughed with the nurses, took short steps down the corridor, and listened to James's stories about the farm, the workers, the garden reborn after the storm. Sometimes she just closed her eyes and listened. His voice seemed to be the best medicine. One evening, as rain began again, gentle this time, Diep turned to him. "You should rest, James. You've been awake for 2 nights." "I'm fine," he said. "No, you're not. You can't take care of me if you collapse first." He smiled, shaking his head. "I'm never tired when I'm with you." The rain whispered against the glass, not a storm, but a lullaby. And in that quiet, James realized how fragile life was, and how fiercely he loved her. When Diep was finally discharged, the world outside looked newly born. The sky was clear, the air washed clean. James packed her small bag with care, folding her scarf, checking the medicine twice. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I've been ready since the day you brought me here," she said, smiling. The drive home was slow. Fields shimmered with leftover rain, the scent of wet soil and freedom filling the car. When the gate creaked open, a small figure ran barefoot toward them. "Company Diep." NHI shouted, tears of joy streaming down her face. Diep knelt, catching her in her arms. "Oh, NHI, I missed you so much. I missed you too. Grandma said you were sick, but you're better now, right?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm better now." James stood a few steps away, watching quietly, the moment too sacred for words. Inside, the house smelled of warm porridge and clean laundry. Grandma Huyen had prepared everything: soft pillows, hot water, gentle food. "You two must be tired," she said kindly. "Eat first." They sat at the wooden table. NHI chattered endlessly, about school, chickens, drawings. Diep listened, smiling between breaths. Occasionally, her eyes wandered to James, who, for the first time in days, looked like a man who could finally breathe again. Peace, for a while. That evening, the sun dipped behind the hills. James stepped outside, the fields bathed in gold and pink. The world felt quiet again, impossibly quiet. Behind him, Diep appeared with a blanket draped over her shoulders. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said. He turned, eyes soft. "It is, but not as beautiful as seeing you here, alive." She smiled faintly. "You were my storm shelter, James. You always are, and I always will be," he said. They stood together in silence, the croak of frogs rising from the fields. The calm after the storm felt fragile, like a dream that might vanish at any moment. James knew she wasn't fully healed. The doctor's warning echoed in his mind. One more relapse could be worse. But he didn't tell her. Not yet, for now, she was home. Smiling. Breathing. That was enough. The second storm. Days passed in peace. Mornings filled with birdsong and sunlight, afternoons with Nye's laughter. Diep sat by the window with tea, sunlight painting her face. James had returned to work, dividing his days between the construction site and home. Each morning before he left, he'd say the same words: rest. Eat. Don't skip your medicine. Yes, boss, she'd reply, smiling, but when he left, she often forgot. She'd fold Nye's clothes, water the plants, watch the slow drift of clouds, until fatigue crept back in. One evening, James came home late, clothes dusty, eyes heavy. Inside, he found Diep on the sofa, pale again. Diep, he said softly. You're home early, she murmured, forcing a smile. He knelt beside her, fingers on her wrist. Her pulse was weak. You didn't rest, did you? I'm fine, she whispered. Just dizzy. He shook his head, his voice breaking. You said that last time, before you fainted. That night, as she slept, James sat by her bed, sleepless again. The rain outside returned, tapping softly, the same rhythm as before. The doctor's words echoed, her immune system is fragile. Another relapse could be worse. James stared out the window into the dark. He had promised to protect her, yet here she was, still fragile, still fading in and out of wellness. The next morning, he called his assistant. Handle the project until I return, he said. But sir, she hesitated, the investors. Tell them family comes first. When he turned around, Diep stood in the doorway, a blanket around her shoulders. You're stopping work because of me, aren't you? He walked to her, brushing her hair gently. Because of us, he corrected. You're my life. The company can wait. Her eyes glistened. You always say things that make me cry, then cry, he said softly. I'll still be here to wipe your tears. Later that afternoon, he took her and NHI for a walk along the path behind their house. The world was gray but calm, banana trees bowed under raindrops, the scent of soil thick in the air. For a moment, everything was perfect. A small family, laughter, peace, but then Diep stopped. Her hand slipped from Nye's. Her face drained of color. Diep. James caught her just as her knees buckled. Her breath came shallow. Stay with me, he whispered, voice trembling. Please stay with me. He carried her back, the world around him blurring, fields, trees, sky, until only her pale face remained. Inside, NHI froze in terror. Is Company Diep sick again? She cried. James's voice broke. She's going to be okay, NHI. I promise. But even as he said the words, fear twisted inside him. The promise he made, to protect her forever, was being tested once again.